Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories I've narrated and update them to modern audio standards. This particular story is called They Don't Understand, written by Mr. E. Monkey. They don't understand. Of course they didn't. How could they? Those primitive little ape children were weak and cowardly. They knew nothing of war, having never once engaged in a single member state of the Galactic Concordance in honorable battle. No, the sniveling ape children always wanted to talk, to negotiate. Not once, in the 63 cycles since they had made contact with the Concordance, had they ever even attempted to assert their dominance over a territory. The cowards would rather give up 3 systems in exchange for 1, but the poor fools had never dealt with the Ingarian Empire. All the member states of the Concordance knew the military prowess of the Ingarian Empire well. Even the ever-belligerent Pokari understood. When the Ingarian Empress decided that the Empire would annex the system, the mighty Ingarian conquest fleet would move in, sterilize the worlds, and it was ours. That was the way of things, and the Concordance members respected that. Yet, just 3 turns after annihilating the human colonies in the Cygnus system, those apes still think they can talk their way out. As if their weakness will keep us from taking more and more systems. The humans don't understand, but they soon will. The humans don't understand. The Galactic Concordance isn't a perfect system. Honestly, there is no such thing. But it has kept a general peace throughout the quadrant for generations. Yes, there have been minor squabbles between member states when one expands into a neighboring system, but they have always been minor. The aggressor announces their intent in the council, and after both parties conduct a military analysis, a small conflict takes place in the system in question. The victor stays, and the vanquished is allowed to evacuate the system in peace, with no further losses. Clean, simple, and it has kept relations between the various members of the Concordance civil for generations. But the humans don't understand. Since encountering the Concordance, they have been one of the most friendly and most peaceful species encountered. Not once in 63 years have they declared an intent to annex another member state's territory, even when it would be a prudent decision to do so. And they have gone out of the way, time and time again, to avoid moving into systems that might potentially be under contention. It's certain that they were taken by surprise when the Ingarian Empire announced their claim to the human colony worlds in the Cygnus system. Perhaps their colonists weren't aware that when their system defense ships were beaten, that it was time to leave, and that by refusing, they would be annihilated, along with the structures. The humans don't understand, but with luck, the Council may guide them to understanding. They don't understand. Humanity almost didn't make it to the stars. We've dreamed about it for time untold. We studied, hoped, and planned, and almost in spite of ourselves, we finally made it. Once we finally stopped trying to murder each other, we made it. Our joy upon reaching out and finding others was immeasurable. Our joy in realizing that they were, for the most part, friendly and helpful was nearly unimaginable. The thought that we could choose to engage in combat with friendly alien races as a matter of politics, heartbreaking. We were done with killing, we told ourselves. We would do all that we could to keep from spreading our bloody hands throughout the galaxy. We wanted to reach out with open hands, not with a closed fist. And for decades, it worked. We were able to deal with every race we encountered, even if we had to take less than a stellar deal. We could always walk away with our hands clean and our heads held high. But then, we encountered the Ingarians, and that all changed. They announced their intent on the Cygnus colonies, and we tried to negotiate. We had found several resource-rich planetoids nearby. Surely those would be an acceptable trade, yet, despite our best efforts, they attacked anyway. We tried to work with them to end the conflict, but it seemed that in spite of, or perhaps due to our efforts, they only became more aggressive and more brutal. When they killed the 23,000 colonists in the Cygnus system, the vote was a mere formality. The Terran Alliance was, unfortunately, at war. The Hungarian Empire thought it was an open and shut affair. They didn't realize that we avoided war, not because we were weak or unprepared. No, despite our best efforts, it seemed that war was all but ingrained in our genes, and they would soon come to find that just because we avoided war at almost any cost, it most certainly did not mean that we weren't prepared for it. We were always prepared for war, ever since we first picked up a sharp rock. And throughout the ages, there was one rule that humanity had always agreed on: win. We would show the Hungarian Empire the true meaning of war. We would show them why we tried so hard to avoid it. We would hate it, and we would spend vast amounts of resources in helping them rebuild their infrastructure after they surrendered. But we would do what we had to win. The Hungarians don't understand, but as our fleets surround their homeworld, they will. End of story. Story number 2. Do It For Mom, written by ________. Humanity was excited when first contact was had, but that wasn't unique. Every species the cosmos had to offer was thrilled and excited when they first met their neighbors, even if it had become mundane for the interstellar community at large. Some of the older species had become bored to death with the entire concept of first contact, willing to exchange pleasantries, but generally disinterested in true cultural exchange. Put bluntly, the rest of the cosmos already had more than they could read in their libraries. They took the volumes humanity offered out of kindness, but they weren't going to read them. That added to humanity's quirkiness. At least that's how kinder individuals put it. Others had no problem labeling humanity freaks and weirdos. What else could you call energetic beings that were too tall to be normal, were comfortable with dangerous radiation exposure, and had a thing for celestial bodies with odd axial tilts and everything that entailed? Add to that mixture an inability to let natural order work its course, and a talent for intervention, and a strange story started to spread. Strange stories about Mom, and how humans were unwilling to do things that would make her mad, sad, and, most of all, disappointed. The first responders any species, regardless of technological prowess, would be offered were human. Their leadership provided standard reasons: goodwill, peace amongst sapiens, every reason any political party would give for intervening. If that same question were posed to the personnel engaged in response, they'd all have a similar highly abnormal statement. They did it for Mom. Mom would be disappointed if they didn't. It's what Mom wanted. This trend held true for any offer humanity made. Offered atmosphere cleansing technologies at cost or complimentary, Mom. Knocking an asteroid or comet out of the way of a non-spacefaring civilization's cradle world, Mom would be pissed if they didn't. Intervening in ethnic cleansing or a species civil conflict, Mom told them better than not to. Human leaders and politicians always evaded answering any direct question, a tactic that caused the rest of the cosmos to question their sincerity. To think that they were embarrassed about not being mammalian after all, or some combination of the two. Speculation would run wild, especially around humanity's biology. Were they actually a hive species? Were they a weird fluke of a mammalian species with an immortal mother that birthed them all? Despite the readily provided information on humanity, speculation still ran rampant. Gossip and conspiracy was more fun, even amongst alien species. Weird bits of art circulated amongst all that wild speculation. Art of a human female with a peculiar hair and the constantly wounded state. Most included a missing eye with a crude, simple patch covering it. Some species decided to try catalog this mystery mother by analyzing all known photos of human females. They'd find Mom, but they didn't. What's more was the graffiti that tended to show up whenever humans were assisting or deployed. All stylized representations of the same figure, and each instance was accompanied by encouraging text and speech bubbles, sometimes a simple, "do it for me," other times far more elaborate and circumstance-specific. Military deployments tended to have more risque and violent depictions, while humanitarian deployments had depictions that could bring poets to tears. Humanity was unique in that manner. Until humanity wasn't. It started with those who frequently interacted with or deployed alongside humans. They started making similar statements about not wanting to let mom or sometimes dad down. Now the depictions started circulating, with humanity's unknown mother suddenly standing with taller or more massive human females and males with different hair, clothing colors, and in far better physical shape. Then humanity's mother suddenly appeared as a different species, left as graffiti by said different species in a conflict zone shared with humanity. Each incarnation of mom or dad always had positive, encouraging things to say. The spreading phenomenon finally caught the interests of cosmic scholars who finally dug into those volumes of books humanity had provided and was always willing to provide. The collective onomatopoeic awe the cosmos issued when those scholars published their findings was palpable. Humanity's mysterious mom was their cradle planet. Compared to many other species, humanity's home was an intense and volatile place. Despite that, humanity had come to anthropomorphize their home. It wasn't something to be conquered, but a sickly thing to be taken care of and protected. At least, that was what their early art and graffiti portrayed. When humanity made contact with the interstellar community, the collective view of mom changed. She wasn't a cute, wounded thing to be pampered and pitied. She was a mean bitch who had experienced more than her share of problems, had come close to death several times, and still sported those scars and bruises. Despite that, and the near matricide she had experienced at the hands of humanity, her and her weird, wayward children had learned true compassion and humanity. Their cradle planet, their Earth, was a cultural embodiment of everything they had endured and what they had become in spite of hardship. That was why Mom was so caring and altruistic. That was why no human was willing to let Mom down. End of story. I would like to thank our T5 members and patrons, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Vidmori, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.